We're back with an episode of Rapid Recap coming off our first look at the 2025 Nebraska Cornhuskers in action. We got a little bit, probably 20, 25 minutes or so of open practice this morning. So we got to see the team in action. Then we talked to Dana Holgorsen, Dylan Raiola, Ja'Cory Barney, and Luke Lindemeyer for their first media availability of spring. And there's plenty to get into, Steve. Where do you want to start in terms of what we got to see this morning?
Yeah, so I guess we can talk about maybe the defense and the defensive line because I think when I walked into Memorial Stadium, half the field was shade, the other half was sunshine. It was kind of like a cool setting. There was a little bit of a chill in the air. It was very cool. And then all of a sudden I just hear the echoes of shouting, and it's Terry Braden, over there at the defensive line. And then when you think about the whole group that he's coaching, Keona Davis stood out. Williams, Waneri stood out. Those two look like physical freaks that you just dream up in a football lab somewhere. They just look incredible. And obviously, looking the part is one thing, but you also need to play the part on the field in the fall. So that will come. But as of right now, I mean, that defensive line room is just really fun to watch. And I thought watching Terry Braden go to work, he brought the energy during his first press conference last month, and he just continues to build on that on the field. And we don't get to watch practice a lot, but today we did, and that energy is just it hasn't lost any. It wasn't disappearing at all. He was bringing it, and it was really fun to watch him work with those two young defensive linemen too, who just look like massive people who are going to be doing some good things. They're on the rise for sure. So Terry Braden kind of caught my eye, the Riley Van Poppels, Elijah Judy's were there as well. Cam Lenhart's was there as well. So it was just really cool to see Terry Braden and a lot of the new coaches as well. Addison Williams with the defensive backs, even Mike Eckler was helping out coaching linebackers too. Philip Simpson with the Jack linebackers. So it was really cool. It was a really cool scene, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Spent some time around the D line room, like you mentioned. Keanu Davis and Williams and Renari are bigger, like certainly bigger. Keanu Davis, you notice in the upper body, even his lower body, both have he's added a good amount of weight.
Mhm.
Really filling into that frame. There was times last year where you saw, especially his upper body, looked a little skinny for his height. So he's very much filled into that frame. Looks like a completely different player. And then Williams and Renard, we talked so much, was added to the team and through the offseason just about how adding weight was a big thing for him. He's certainly done that. Does not look like the guy we saw at Missouri last fall. Definitely looks like he's closer to 270 than 255 at this point. Maybe even bigger. I thought Riley Van Poppel more muscle than fat at this point. I think he's bulked up a little bit too. And more than anything, he's just kind of converting the body mass index. Essentially, he's converting some of that fat percentage into muscle. So he's muscled up. Elijah Judy, they say he's hovering around 300 now. He definitely looks that. You
Yeah.
look around the room, David Hofkin, a younger guy that's developing, or not younger guy, but relatively in terms of the program, he's
Mhm.
23, but
Mhm.
technically a redshirt sophomore or redshirt freshman. He's still developing, kind of figuring it out, but he's definitely added some muscle as well. The room just looks bigger. Like again, you lose Nash and Ty, you think that room's going to take a step back, but they've got size, they've got mass on the inside, they've got a pretty solid group kind of working with. But again, there's still some depth concerns, and we
Mhm.
also got to look at he's injured, but we got to look at Gabe Moore.
Yeah.
Looks closer to the 290 he was listed at
Yes.
than the
Yes.
250. The 290 he was listed at Mississippi State, and the 250 he was listed at Nebraska.
I'm glad you brought up Gabe Moore because that's what I wanted to kind of highlight as well. Yeah, when we walk in there, he was part of that small group of guys who weren't practicing. They were in different colored jerseys and they were just on the stationary bike getting some conditioning in. And Gabe Moore was one of them. So it's his third, just for some background on Gabe Moore, it's his third year of college football. He's a transfer from Mississippi State, but he has not played a snap of college football yet. So, he's listed at 250 right now, like Tim mentioned. But yeah, I mean, watching him just go on the bike, he didn't look like 250 pounds. He looked closer to the 290 that Mississippi State had him at. So that's just going to continue to be a storyline of what can Gabe Moore provide this defensive line room, if anything, in the fall. So there's still a lot of question marks with him. But as for right now, it's kind of positive to see him at that 200 we don't know how much he weighs right now, but just more than 250. He looked, at least to my eyes and your eyes, Tim, look bigger than 250. But let's shift over to or staying on the defense. Did anything defensive back wise? I thought there was some good reps from Jeremiah Charles at the corner position. They were having a lot of good battles. I think it was really fun to
Yeah.
watch the DBs and the receivers go through it, and then obviously some of the passes from the quarterbacks. But anybody over there in that kind of area impress you, Tim? I know one Isaiah Mosey. I was talking. I may have mentioned Mosey's name to you maybe 3 separate times today about how impressive he looked to me. He really had a great kind of open portion of the practice for when the media was there watching. He on one rep, he absolutely just burned Mario Buford off the line of scrimmage and caught an easy touchdown pass from Dylan Raiola. And the cool thing about that I caught on camera was Dylan Raiola sure loved him some Isaiah Mosey too. He was absolutely stoked that Mosey just beat Buford off the line so easily and caught a touchdown pass. So, Tim, what else from the receivers or DBs that maybe stood out to you?
Yeah, we got to see the receivers in action a little bit. Like, just generally talking QBs and the throws. I mean, I think, we saw it in pro day a couple of days ago. We saw him a little bit today. Dylan's still like smooth and maybe smoother than he even was last year, just in terms of the confidence he's throwing the ball with, just the calmness and how collected he is. Again, it's routes on air for the most part. Obviously, we got to see some one-on-ones, but just he's pretty sharp right now, and it's impressive to watch him in action. But no, I mean, talking about the DBs, I thought Andrew Marshall had a pretty competitive rep with Cortez Mills on the far field, and I really like the competitive energy that Marshall brings. I think just his infusion, his addition to the roster, some of these young guys, on the roster are just going to make each other better. Wide receivers, DBs, just with the competitiveness. Like you mentioned, Jeremiah Charles stood out a little bit. Justin Rhett, not necessarily in
Yeah.
one-on-ones, but
Hmm.
working through drills. I just like the way he moves around, the way he looks. Good looking player out there. And then we're starting to get a view of just what this secondary is going to look like under John Butler. You assume, it's going to be Sierra Wright at one corner spot. Still figuring out that other corner spot. Could be Andrew Marshall, could be one of those guys. But you feel like the two safeties at this point are going to be Marquez Buford, Deshaun Singleton. And then what's that nickel going to look like? We got a bit of a view of that in practice. The linebackers working with a small group of DBs in linebacker drills. So you had, like the typical Vincent Shavers, and Marquise Watson Trent, Christian Jones, and Dawson Merritt kind of going through drills. And it's two linebackers and then a third DB. And those DBs were Mario
Yeah.
Buford,
Mario.
Malcolm Hartzog, and Larry
Tarver.
Tarver Jr. Those
Hmm.
three. We could see some more working in, but they're kind of working essentially in that overhang spot, that like that
Yeah.
that third safety spot that's going to essentially creep down and be that third corner if
Hmm.
Nebraska needs it. I think that's kind of what you're going to see this defense evolve to. That's my personal prediction is, I think Deshaun Singleton is going to end up being replacing that rover spot essentially, and you're going to have someone playing that true nickel, and more than likely, I think it's going to be Hartzog, just with the experience he has, and honestly, that's the best place for him, working out of the slot a little bit, being
Hmm.
able to kind of come down and kind of play out of that position. I think it's the best spot for him. But I expect Harvard to compete for snaps. I expect Buford to compete for snaps. We met with Marcus Buford earlier this week, and he expects his brother to be ready for some major playing time this year. But that's what stood out to me just watching the DBs. I did think getting a look at all these new receivers, and then listening to Dylan Raiola and Dana Holgorsen talk about them. Yeah, it's a different room. It's a different room. You can see the talent. You see, Hardly Gilmore, just some flashes of what that athleticism looks like. Cortez
Hmm.
Mills, just how consistent he is, the way he tracks the ball, how good of a route runner he is. And then, like you mentioned, I feel like there's a lot of new additions. Dane Keene, Isaiah Hunter. We didn't see a whole lot of Hunter today, by the way, but Dane Keene, Isaiah Hunter, Gilmore, all these guys, and Mosey's the kind of the forgotten one in terms of the new additions. But he stole the show. I thought he was the one that was winning most consistently
Hmm.
in those one-on-one reps. Really sharp route runner, does a good job separating and track the ball well. Again, it's these one-on-ones. They're not running super complex routes just yet, but I like the way he was moving around.
Yeah, this might be an overreaction, but and of course it's the third practice of spring, and so and like you said, they were just running kind of fade routes and out routes and just kind of in cut routes and stuff like that. But I really like the look of Isaiah Mosey. He was big out there, about 6'1", 200 pounds. He was fast off the line of scrimmage. He looked physical when the DB got kind of inside of him. I think he's going to play. I think Isaiah Mosey, just from watching him move around and catch the ball and just be an athlete out there, and judging from Dylan Raiola's reaction out there, I think there's a connection that could be building between those two athletes out there, and that's good news for Husker fans if that pair can take off. Just considering how young everybody is in that duo, so I think Isaiah Mosey has a great chance to play. Now, obviously, there's a lot of athletic, talented guys in that wide receiver room. And there's also the part of knowing the offense and understanding where you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to be running your routes in the offense. And that's got to be hard for a true freshman. But Isaiah Mosey's here for spring. He's going to have all summer to learn everything. So I'm very, very high on Isaiah Mosey. And Tim, I know you are as well. So we'll see what he can do. But man, I was really impressed just finally getting eyes on Isaiah Mosey and some of these guys. I think Isaiah Mosey is going to carve out a role for himself in the fall. But Tim, we can transition to maybe the press conference now and talk a little bit about Dana Holgorsen. Dana Holgorsen, the offensive coordinator, spoke at the podium, and then the players were Dylan Raiola, Ja'Cory Barney, and Luke Lindemeyer. Luke Lindemeyer was in the hallway, so we weren't able to catch any of what he said, but we were there for Dylan and Ja'Cory. Dylan, by the way, he looks fantastic. This whole 240-pound thing that rule threw out there, and I know he said what he said and he worded it the way he did, and he was kind of surprised some people took it and ran with it in the wrong direction, saying he was maybe overweight. But I mean, we saw Dylan today. He looks fantastic. I thought his
Yeah,
body
the
looked
weight's not a
great.
concern. The
No,
size isn't a concern for me. It's never really been a concern for me.
no, the
But
whole
it's
thing
definitely
was
not a
overblown.
concern.
The whole
Yeah,
storyline was
it's
overblown.
yeah. I'm not concerned about it. I think he looks good physically, and I think he understands what he needs to do. He talked about it himself. Dana talked about it, just like what he can
Hmm.
add and what he needs to really work on this offseason is yeah, red zone. But on top of that, just being more mobile, get like giving defenses that threat of him as a runner, and
Hmm.
presenting that more often. I think that's something that he wants to do. He wants to be a little more athletic. And yeah, I thought it was pretty insightful getting to talk to him and Dana about just the offense, where things are going, and
Hmm.
when the transition first happened, when Dana first took over, it was a lot about, hey, it's the same offense, it's keeping a lot of the same, and yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of the similar elements in the offense, but I think
Hmm.
it's going to be more efficient. And Dana hinted at today, I think some bigger changes are coming.
Especially in the passing offense too. He said that it's going to like need to make sense for the quarterback and it's going to need to make sense for the offensive line. He mentioned Donovan Raiola and how, the tweaks that Holgerson is making is going to have to make sense for everybody. And that includes the offensive line, which I thought was really kind of good to put in there because at the end of the day, the offensive line needs to, pass protect. They need to run block. They're incredibly important. But I have a good quote here, Tim, from Dana Holgerson, who is talking about the offense and what he wants it to look like in the fall and maybe how it might differ from what we saw under Marcus Satterfield for most of the year in 2024. But the quote says, there's subtle changes in terminology. There's subtle changes, whether it's in sets or plays or whatever, but the majority of it is going to stay the same. I mean, we have good coaches here. This is a good scheme. So yeah, I think that's smart to just kind of keep what Marcus Satterfield laid down, that foundation of it, but just kind of pare down and not have so many different moving parts to it. And I think that's what Dana Holgerson did when he was inserted into that play caller role last November after the UCLA loss, was to just kind of pare down and focus on things that they're really good and get really good at those things. And then once that happens, then you can maybe just add on. But yeah, Dana also said that the passing game is going to have some changes. I mean, to what he is comfortable calling and what the quarterback and receivers are comfortable with running. So this is going to be not a completely different offense, but it's going to be tweaked to what Dana Holgerson and Dylan Raiola do best, and the offensive line does best too. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Dana had a really kind of interesting quote. He said, "I'm not interested in my old air raid roots." I thought that was cool too
Yeah,
because
I thought that was
mhm,
fascinating because again, like I mentioned a couple weeks ago on, I think on this show, just how recruits have talked about Dana's background in the air raid and how that's come up when they've met with the staff. And I think essentially reading between the lines here, I mean, there's going to be elements of, okay, some empty, some hurry
Mhm.
up, certain air raid, concepts or
Staples.
air raid staples essentially. There's
Hmm.
going to be mesh. They're going to be mesh is going to be a
White
staple in this
cross.
offense. Wide
Yeah.
cross, you're going to see a lot of those air raid, staples within this offense in terms of how they run and what they run. But overall, I mean, it's going to be a multiple type offense. It's going to be a pro style type offense. You're going to see Dylan
Mhm.
line up under center. You're going to see a power run game. You're going to see all these different things. It's just kind of figuring out what works and tweaking game by game. I think that's the biggest thing. I think you can expect out of Dana Holgorsen. I think depending on opponent, depending on strengths, weaknesses of his roster and the roster he's going up against, I think you're going to see this program evolve week to week, and this offense evolve week to week based on who they face.
And they said, and Dana said, a key kind of emphasis in the early parts of spring ball practices was to work on the 2 minute drill when you're behind and needing to get the ball down the field in a hurry. And that also 4 minute offense. When you have the ball, you have a lead and you're trying to protect it. Those have been emphases in the earlier parts of spring ball because Dana said last year he wasn't happy with the 2 minute offense and he wasn't happy with the 4 minute offense. So those are things to keep in mind too. And I thought it was really interesting that Dana also talked about, like you said, Tim, committing to the run and making sure you're able to run the football as well. Dana said kind of a cool little nugget from practice today on Thursday was there was 24 straight inside run plays that the
Oh,
offense was
inside zone
working on.
plays, inside zone. Yeah.
Inside zone plays, yes. So that kind of like tells you that every single offseason play callers always talk about, hey, we want to take the run seriously. We want to make a serious commitment to the run, and then you don't see it in the fall, right? So with Dana Holgorsen now having an entire offseason with Dylan Raiola at quarterback and with all the guys, all the pieces here, you know, are we going to see that commitment in the fall? So that's something to keep an eye on. And I think there's something, to be said when you look at Dana's history and especially what he did at West Virginia. There were seasons where he was pass heavy. There were seasons where he was run heavy, and he focused on the offensive line and running the ball between the tackles. And so I think that's when somebody like Dana Holgorsen says he wants to commit to the run. I kind of believe him.
Yeah, and they talked on Tuesday. Rule talked about it on Tuesday. Dana said it again. Just the confidence in the depth, despite us not having seen many guys in that room besides Emmett Johnson. There's some confidence in that room, and we saw, towards the end of the offensive segment in practice, we saw the running backs doing some one-on-ones. Really like what we saw from Emmett Johnson as a pass catcher, running
Oh
some
yeah.
wheel routes, getting open. Mekhi Nelson had a couple good reps, and then Jamarian Parker definitely looks like he's bulked up a little bit, closer to
Mm-hmm.
190, like instead of the
190.
175 that he was listed at when he joined the program. I thought, there was one play in particular from Parker that stood out. So, um, you like the depth that's coming together. I think Nelson's going to be that RB2. I think Quentin Ives is in that mix as well, but
Mm-hmm.
I guess he didn't catch my eye today. But I like what I saw from Nelson. Like what I saw from Parker, and yeah, I think there's some confidence in that room, and there's a reason. They wouldn't go or talk about being as run heavy as they are if they weren't confident in that room. And Emmett Johnson, again, I'm more than a running back. I think he's just going to be an offensive weapon for them. Like he's going to be a factor in the pass game and the run game.
I think I think Emmett Johnson in this offense is, I don't want to say a given, but I think he's going to have a good year. I think he's going to have a really solid year and kind of replicate what he did towards the back half of 2024, where he was a big threat running the ball, catching the ball. And then once he got through that first line of defense and got to that second level, making guys miss. So that's what Emmett Johnson really kind of impressed with, at least to me towards the end of last season, was his shake and bake and making guys miss and getting those extra yards that don't initially look like they're there. So yeah, behind him though, for sure. I mean, there's bodies and a lot of it is talk right now, and we just need to see it in the fall, especially with Quentin Ives. This is such a massive spring for him entering his third year. We've heard that he looks great physically, 6'3", 210 pounds. And of course, there's going to be situations where you want a bigger body guy back there. And I think Quentin Ives right now is going to have to be that guy. So I don't know who else is going to maybe challenge him for that. Of course, there's Connor Booth. at 210 pounds, but he's just a true freshman. But he was out there as well. I know he for Bishop Newman last fall, Tim, he was kind of playing through and rushing for all those yards through some minor injuries, maybe a knee or ankle, but he was out there full bore. He wasn't in a colored jersey at all, so he looked fine. But yeah, Makai Nelson, Quentin Ives, Emmett Johnson, even Kenneth Williams. I hope Kenneth Williams carves out a role maybe as a returner somewhere. He just strikes me as such a jitterbug type little player. Listed at 5'9". He's probably 5'8", 180 pounds. He's probably 170 pounds. I think Kenneth Williams could maybe do something in as a returner. But that's a long time, to be talking about that. But yeah, Jamarian Parker as well. It was really great to hear Rule kind of confirm that he's not 175 pounds. He's like 190 right now. So he's that breakaway speed type guy that they landed out of St. Louis. That's going to be huge if he hits and can maybe carve out a role for himself as a true freshman. But yeah, anything else maybe Dylan talked about? I mean, both Holgorsen and Dylan talked about maybe this offense in the fall kind of messing around with tempos, playing at different tempos. Dylan said that he likes going at different speeds because it throws the defense off so much, and I can definitely see how that can matter. But to do that, you need to be good at it, right? And I can just close my eyes of them. It's against Illinois or somebody or Northwestern or something, and you get a first down and you go fast, then all of a sudden somebody false starts on the offensive line or something like that. So in order to go fast and to play at different tempos, it's all good on paper, but like, can you do it efficiently? That's where I'm kind of like wondering about. It's all fun to talk about right now, but to be good at it, you need to practice at it, and they are and everything. But I thought the tempo talk was kind of cool too.
Yeah, I thought that was insightful. I'm excited to see what like, as this relationship develops between Dylan and Dana through the spring into, summer quote unquote OTAs and then fall camp, what that looks like. And the last note for me, I mean, just from the practice, we got to see, we didn't really touch on special teams, but Eckler out there
Yeah.
working, making the rounds,
Mm-hmm.
still as vocal. If it wasn't Terry Braden, I think the other loud voice across practice was
Yeah.
was Eckler, who's bringing the
Mm-hmm.
energy. They were working some special team stuff in there too, but he's just around, man. He's just around with the linebackers. He's kind of just bouncing around, and you can tell he's kind of in roster eval mode, where he's still kind of evaluating who fits in special
Mm-hmm.
teams, who doesn't, and again, he's one of the few guys on the roster that has to know every single player.
Yeah.
One of the only guys on the coaching staff that has to know every single player on the roster. So you can tell he's in that eval mode, but yeah, that energy, it has not dropped off one bit across, the last like decade or plus of him coaching.
Oh yeah, for sure. And another guy who's kind of floating around to different positions, Phil Snow, which Matt Rule said he'd do, and Phil said himself. So as the associate head coach, kind of just overseeing John Butler's entire defense. So that was kind of good to see him. And I think that's good for the coaches as well, because all the assistant coaches talked about how cool it is to coach under somebody like Phil Snow, who's been there and done that for so many years and knows this game inside and out, and more importantly, knows exactly what Matt Rule wants on a defense. So that's very important too. One more quote from Dana Holgorsen, and we can get out of here, Tim. But I thought it was cool that Dana was talking about. He's not really worried about the yardage totals for rushing and passing this fall. He's more worried about efficiency. And this is a good quote that I thought came from Dana. He said, "It's more about efficiency and first downs and third down conversions, touchdowns in the red zone, things that matter. To me, yardage doesn't matter. Yards per play matters." Obviously. Tim, reaction?
Yeah, I mean, again, just the humor from Dana, the
He's
4-7
awesome.
comment,
He's
the
awesome.
4-7 comment talking about Daikiel Shorts, got the room pretty good. And then yeah, just that last little note, just back to last year, a little callback to last year before Dana was even hired, about the comment about yards per play last year. But again, it's understandable, and you look at, and again, Dana is a guy that's been doing this at a high level for a very long time, and like you mentioned, year to year, it's not there's no clear, like, across his career, when he was offensive coordinator, when he was head coach,
Mhm.
there's no clear consistency year to year
No.
in balance. There's no,
Mhm.
it's no, you know what I mean? And so it really is just what's effective, what works for the roster.
And
And so I
what
get,
his players can do.
right. Right. So it's for him, it's what allows us to win games, what allows us to average the most yards per play, be efficient on third down, get off
Mhm.
the like get points on the board, all of that. It's not necessarily about how many passing yards are they going to throw for this game,
Yes.
how many times are they going to rush this game. Like it's not necessarily about that, it's about what works. And that's what you want from an offensive coordinator. So early on, I mean, again, I'll note this too just from practice, it feels different in terms of the offense. Last year felt like there were still very much like rules still had like oversight over it. There's
Yeah.
still, rule is
Hmm.
looking over it. This feels like Dana's unit, like completely. Like Dana is completely watching over this whole thing. EJ Bartel has his running backs. Marcus Satterfield has his tight ends. Donovan
Hmm.
Raiola has his offensive linemen. But it's Dana that's overseeing the whole offensive operation, not rule anymore.
We know Rule is a defensive guy at heart. He's a defensive line guy at heart. And you're right, Tim. I thought, at first when he got to Nebraska a few seasons ago, he was overseeing everything. But the offense needs to be better. And Matt Rule has shown that he is extremely serious about making changes to what he thinks will push this team over the edge. And to that, it's basically hiring a head coach for the offense. And who better to go get who was available at the time than Dana Holgorsen. So, the offense is going to be fun to talk about and fun to follow throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, no doubt. That'll probably do it for us. Appreciate you
Mm-hmm.
guys tuning in. We like and subscribe. We'll be back with the recruiting blitz next week. We'll have plenty of content from practices next week as well. So stay tuned for all of that. Big recruiting weekend coming up for the
Mm-hmm.
Huskers. So stay tuned for our coverage over at InsideNebraska.com. We'll be back next week.